networking event titled Post-COVID-19 Integrating New Normal with SDG 11 has been organized by ISPA for the Malaysia Urban Forum. This is organized in partnership with UN Habitat, UNESCAP, and UNCRD. As we all know that in September 2015, actually it was 26th September 2015, 5 years and 3 days ago, the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, which were adopted by all the 193 nations, and endorsed those goals, which were to be reached by 2030. 5 years have passed and 10 years are left. We are still moving ahead, but there is a kind of stumbling block now we are facing in the form of a pandemic. When, as a matter of fact, these goals were adopted in 2015, the world had already crossed the benchmark of 50%. More than 50% people were living in cities and towns. By 2030, it is expected that almost 60% of the world's population will be living in urban areas. 95% of urban expansion in the next decade will take place in the developing world, and rapid urbanization will continue exerting pressure on fresh water, sewage, living environment, public health, etc., etc. With this pandemic as a very big stumbling block for the whole world, both the developed and the developing, we feel that the world will have a new normal post-COVID era, and we will have to address several kind of new challenges, including the urban densities, in a manner that bring more efficiency gains and technological innovation while reducing resource and energy consumption. This webinar, as a matter of fact, has been organized in which there are, I would say, 6 distinguished speakers who, as a matter of fact, are going to present some of the very innovative and out-of-the-box ideas for meeting those SDG targets that are for 2030. The Sustainable Development Goal relates to the Sustainable Cities, which is SDG 11, under which there are several targets. One of the SDG targets is that by 2030, we have to enhance inclusive and sustainable urbanization and capacity for participatory, integrated, and sustainable human settlement planning and management in all countries, very particularly the developing countries, very specially. It is in this regard that one of our lead speaker, Kanwar Surjit Singh, who is the Secretary General ISPA in India, will be talking mainly on the agenda of city planning and for integrating new normal with SDG 11. The kind of paradigm shift which is really required will be highlighted. I'd like to invite Kanwar Surjit Singh ji.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. The presentation, in fact, is a reminder of the basics that we follow in city planning. And it reminds us where we have faulted ourselves to forget those basics. And the situation which we are feeling maybe at one of the reasons of our failure in understanding the basics of presentation. The idea of holding this event, as discussed with my fellow presenters, was whether the norms that we have in place and planning with those norms have really suited us and have really served the purpose, or the fault lies somewhere else. And before that slide appears on the screen, I have tried to build the whole system on 4 pillars of planning. The first one that I Sir, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible. Yes, please go ahead.
Presentation is visible?
Yes,
Yes.
presentation is also visible. Yes. Should we have a full screen?
These are the 4 pillars which I have considered as a very important parameters of, and that is the numbers. Be it any aspect of planning, the people, the infrastructure, the transport, the existing and projected, whatever we may call, and convert it into units. And then we go to the temporal growth or periodic review. And the second pillar that I have considered are the locations which matter. Be it the existing or the convenient one as we think or as proposed. But the distributional pattern existing and the proposed siting and connectivity, these are all imbibed in one pillar that I call it as locations. And the third one are the distances. We existing as these are, the convenient as we consider, and the proposed as per the plans. But these are all where the scale matters, be it the intricacy or the relative distances or whatever is the desirable. The fourth is the dimensions, be it the desirable or the convenient or the required sizes, both horizontal and vertical. But the question then arises how we have intertwined these 4 pillars to build a balanced urban planning structure, which we all call as sustainability. We have in place the entire fixing of norms, then phasing of development, then all is in place. But the most important factor that we consider disturbing is the market force, which governs the real estate management and dictates the terms of how the things have to be planned, where land is the key issue. And the strong arguments, these factors which force us to concede the land as a limited resource, very strong argument, and densification, then re-densification, and now the de-densification. The whole process is kept dynamic, whereas most of the planning proposals and urban developments are static in their existence. They may be dynamic in their use, but so far as their existence on the surface is concerned, it is static. But when the attainable urban ecosystem is disturbed, then what happens? We start studying the factors of aggravation. We point out which were the factors of aggravation, and then start suggesting the mitigation measures. And that includes the regularization of illegalities as well. But the precarious issue involved is again the existential issue. And the idea of a new normal is floated. And this new normal, if we link with the sustainable, yes. Yes. The goal 11, and this is not alone. Linked with goal 11 is the poverty, health, education, hunger, economic growth, and the industry and infrastructure. And the another sixth goal is the relating to the water. But that I have not linked here because when we talk of infrastructure, water is part of it, including the sanitation. But in the COVID, it has affected the economy, the education, the health, the tourism, and the socio-cultural activities. The theories of living, workplace, recreation, and transportation now rendered as theory of a normal period or environment. But the pandemic impacted not only goal 11, but also interconnected SDGs, which I have already said. But the point here is the new normal, which is required for reinvigorating the cities to accomplish the SDGs by 2030, and whatever is the new normal, integrate with SDGs. But in this, I would like to remind one of the very famous statement of Albert Einstein: the world will not evolve past its current state of crisis. That's very important. By using the same thinking that created the situation. That's where we are now landed in the COVID-19. The new norms were introduced during early century. That's it. Just to recap what had been done earlier because of the epidemics or the pandemics. And essentially to limit the mix only to the compatible land uses. Strict land use zoning was followed. New zoning regulations were introduced to regulate locations, maintaining minimum distances and dimensions, and the construction of buildings, their placement, orientation, spaces around, these all were regulated. But it was because man being part of a nature, effort was to integrate it with the nature. Therefore, the measures of alleviation, palliation, and placebo treatment will not work. Diagnose and solve the problem. And for this, the new normal, which I find out, apply and adhere to the nature cycles. Respect nature as man is part of it. Respect diversity and make use of the sun. Respect the law and do not compromise the law provisions for the sake of ease of doing business and yielding to the market pressure. Numbers, locations, distances, and dimensions must be respected and adhered. Give freedom to urban local bodies to frame bylaws suited to the local environments and localize city planning and architecture as well. Adopt eco-efficiency, that is, doing maximum out of the minimum to transform human industry from a system that takes, makes, and wastes into one that integrates the economy, environmental, and ethical concerns. Ease the process of development as integral part of implementation of SDG 11 to accomplish the sub-goals by 2030 and intertwine with the city plans. That's what I had to say.
Thank you so much. I think one of the highlights that is mentioned, and I would like to repeat, that the global economy is very adversely affected because of this pandemic, and it will take, I would say, that not less than a couple of years for the world economy to come out of that situation and reach the pre-COVID level. Well, no doubt about it. So far as urban planning is concerned, you have very rightly defined a new normal so that, the ecosystem, is very balanced, as you have tried to highlight in one of them, basically that. I would like to say that strengthening national and regional development planning is as important, for that matter. And I would like to invite Dr. Bhavna Bali, professor in the Department of Energy and Environment in the Terry School of Advanced Studies, New Delhi, India. She, as a matter of fact, is going to speak on revisiting the whole process of urban planning in India per se, because we are also having severe challenges that are really coming up. Dr. Bhavna Bali, please. Dr. Bali, can you hear me?
Sorry, I think Dr. Bali is currently offline. Is it possible for us to proceed to the next speaker?
Yeah, okay. All right. Till the time she joins us. Actually, one of the SDG 11 target also relates to the disasters, including water-related disasters, having a focus on protecting the poor and people in vulnerable situations. And also, very specially, I would say that the whole issue of holistic disaster risk management at all levels. I would like to especially request Dr. Saswat Bandyopadhyay, who's a professor from the CEPT University, Ahmedabad. Dr. Saswat Bandyopadhyay will be speaking on post-COVID role of urban local bodies in urban disaster risk reduction. That's one of the points which was highlighted by the lead speaker of strengthening the urban local bodies. And I think it's very important for the disaster risk management per se. Professor Saswat Bandyopadhyay.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Thank you very much. And also thank you, ISPAR, for organizing this event, very important event. So how do I share my presentation? Would it be uploaded or I have to do it this?
You have to do it actually at your end.
Okay.
Kindly do that.
Just a minute. I have this is share this.
Hi, Dr. Saswat. Yeah.
Thank you. So the talk here is what I would like to share today is about the role of urban local bodies, specifically in urban disaster risk reduction. And in the post-COVID era, as you have seen that COVID particularly has taken this entire aspect of the role of local bodies to a great level. And this is what I need to share today, that how we take care of this particular role of the local bodies. Can you move to the next slide? Is it, I'm not finding the, yeah, okay. So if you look at the COVID-19, we see there is massive disruption in life of living across the global regions. But what is emerging from this COVID crisis, that cities are at the center of COVID action. Much of the COVID cases and impacts are being seen in the urban areas. We did some analysis in Indian data and we found about 80% of these cases are in India are hovering is related to this urban area. And this crisis has also brought back to the debate of resilience, issues of public health, urban planning, housing, parks and open spaces, and more importantly, the increasing role of urban local bodies in urban disaster risk reduction. Because during this COVID crisis, it was evident that the first frontline warrior has been the local bodies. Urban local bodies, unlike other disasters, the urban local bodies have been playing a very important role in terms of this COVID crisis, and that has brought major attention on the urban local bodies. And if we say new normal post-COVID, we see an opportunity to build back better and living back safer in terms of these COVID opportunities and post-COVID new normal. As Dr. Singh just mentioned, that disaster risk reduction has been in the core of SDG 11 targets. It is basically significantly reduce the number of deaths and also holistic disaster risk management at various levels. Now, this SDG 11 we have been talking about a large amount of resilient, safe habitat, sustainable habitat, and the leadership role that we are witnessing that urban local bodies have been playing in COVID-19. Cities across the global region are at the forefront of COVID emergency response and COVID risk management. It is either the cities are spreading awareness, capacity building, local administration, mapping of city level public and other health facility, developing a city level mass communication, managing of biomedical waste. A number of events our urban local bodies have been playing and been on the forefront in this COVID crisis. And when we are talking about this new normal, that we have to live with safe social distancing, where the cities, because across the region, the citizens have to follow a certain social distancing or safe living protocols, be it in terms of the space marking, organizing of the urban spaces, and the load this living with the safe social distancing. Urban local bodies have to play a major very kind of a front leading role. Also in post COVID-19, in if you see that SDG 11 goals and targets, now the COVID-19 and new normal, we are looking at focus on access to core services, affordable housing and public spaces, integrated green and blue infrastructure, increased city regional connectivity and planning, and more city level granular data and understanding and managing the crisis. In all this, we find the role of urban local bodies are getting much more important. So in SDG 11, when you say that we are to achieve, and one of the SDG 11 targets are this year 2020, where we are to integrate disaster management and risk reduction plan. So when we are looking at a build back better, and when we are looking at to live back safer, this COVID-19 crisis also have given this opportunity to strengthen urban local bodies' role in reducing the disaster risk in urban areas and making a kind of a safer habitat, so that the living back becomes safer. So in this new normal, when we are talking about integrating and supporting SDG 11, the disaster risk reduction, the role of urban local bodies becoming a major important aspect of this area. So we build safer habitat, building back better and living back safer. The role of urban local bodies would be immense in the future, thereby the strengthening SDG implementation or localization of SDG 11, and also the meeting the goals and targets of SDG 11 this year and also by 2030. As we are becoming more and more urbanized, this role of ULBs have to be strengthened both through the empowerment and decentralization. Thank you. I wanted to share my views with this. Thank you very much, ISPAR, and also Malaysia Urban Forum and Dr. Singh for giving this opportunity. Thank you, and over back to you. Dr. Singh.
Yes, thank you so much. Can you hear me? Dr. Saswat Bandyopadhyay,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Basically, I think the whole thought that cities are at the forefront. We have observed that pandemic crisis is largely being managed by them directly, and we have to really ensure that their role in the years to come should be as much strengthened as possible. In fact, the highlights of what you said was shaping safer habitats, or even the ensuring public spaces as green as possible, as open as possible. I think that's a role which, as a matter of fact, local governments have to play. And it is very important that if we have to see SDG 11 to be achieved, it has to be that we localize the agenda basically of SDG 11 so that those goals can get achieved. One challenge which pandemic has given is that, you know, we have to keep distances. We have also to ensure, as a matter of fact, you know, that transport, as a matter of fact, plays a very vital role. On the one side, the, you know, Sustainable Development Goal 11 target relating to the transport says that we have to provide access to safe, affordable, accessible, and sustainable transport system for all, improving road safety, expanding public transport with special attention to those in vulnerable situations, women, children, persons with disabilities, and older persons. But what this pandemic has created a kind of scare that, you know, public transport is now being avoided. Public transport is being avoided so that, you know, people are able to keep distances. So there is a big challenge that is there before the, you know, for bringing out sustainability in the transport, so that, you know, we do not increase the personal mobility and increase the environmental pollution, air pollution in the cities and towns. That's where I think I'm requesting Dr. Ashwini Luthra, who is a professor and coordinator for the Center for Sustainable Habitat in the Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar. He will be talking mainly on the post-pandemic mobility challenges and strategies, which become significantly important if we have to ensure sustainability. Sustainability of transport is linked with the sustainability of several goals. And it is significantly important that, you know, post-pandemic scenario strategies have to really take care that we really deal with that situation. Professor Luthra.
Thank you, Dr. Kulwant Singh ji. John, can you close down this presentation first, and then probably I will be able to share my presentation. Dr. Saswat. John, can you upload? Yeah.
I can't upload your presentation from my end. You have to upload from your end.
Okay.
I don't have your file.
Let me see. Is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you, ISPER and Malaysia Urban Forum for giving me this opportunity to present my views on the post-pandemic mobility challenges and strategies. We know, as Dr. Kulwant Singh has already explained, that we are urbanizing fast, and that way the world urbanization is expected to reach 68% by 2050. And with that regard, if you see the mobility trend, the demand for mobility, it is also increasing rapidly. And by 2050, it is expected that it will reach 67.1 trillion persons per kilometer. Now, in that relation, we need to understand these figures also. Like this is for today, the data on Worldometer, that we are having 33.55 million COVID cases now, and the recovery is about 74.1%. So the encouraging part to me, it appears, is that the death rate is decreasing. But on the other side, if we see an Indian case, where the population with age more than 45 years, that is the most affected, and this 60 to 74 years population, and more than that, above 75, these are the vulnerable people. So this becomes a case that we need to do something for these people, taking consideration of mobility or their mobility. And in that relation, a study in Europe conveys a shift from uh, the previous mode of transport to the new. And the trend says that people are shifting from public transport to private transport, as Dr. Kulwant Singh already conveyed. And in that relation, what are the challenges at the moment? We are working from home, the social and physical distancing that has been advocated, and it is already conveyed that we should follow. Decreased services on mass transit, that is being practiced because mass transit is not operating its full swing. There is difficulty of elders and disabled to reach the essential services. Of course, arrangements are made, but still their mobility is restricted to the essential services. Similarly, the school children, for education purposes, the school children are not allowed, or they are not given the chance to go to their schools, and they are working from home, or they are taking their education from home. Then there is inadequate sanitization of vehicles as well, because it may be good for the developed nations, but for developing nations, this is not a good sign that sanitation is properly done for the vehicles. At the same time, per capita private travel cost has increased because people are using their own mode of transport. At the same time, higher single person, single car journeys have increased. And these reasons, they have given challenges like restricted mobility, reduced congestion, inadequate public transport system available, mobility not for all, unsafe mobility, unhealthy mobility, unaffordable mobility, and unsustainable mobility. So all the positives, they have got converted into the negatives in one form or the other. In this context, what we need to do at this moment is design self-contained communities to reduce outbound longer trips. This is the first intervention that needs to be done. More balanced land use transport planning, because this is always advocated that there should be a balance between the land use and transport system. We need to practice more so that the accessibilities are improved. Non-motorized transport-centric mobility planning has to be the new normal now to promote safe and green mobility. Promote micro-mobility. This is a new concept emerging out of this COVID condition, because people, they have started using the walking and bicycling as their mode of transport, and this is also essential from social distancing point of view. Encourage safe and healthy mobility of all for social justice, because once we are safely traveling, health is good, then this will give social justice to all, because we will not be infecting the others. Make mass public transport the first choice of people. This is required because in the times to come, post-COVID situation, again we will have to go for public transport, because if the private modes are there on roads, the issues are bundled up further. Then bring about green mobility by promoting e-transport system. This is another requirement, because under COVID condition, a lot of data has come that environment or the carbon emissions in the air, they have reduced drastically, and that itself should be restored. And one of the key areas can be green mobility. So some examples that once we talk about self-contained communities, then this concept of 15 minutes cities, it is popularizing nowadays. At the same time, integrated townships is another area where, say from the terminal point or otherwise, within a radius of 400 to 800 meters, the development, if that is there, then it is called a walkable neighborhood. Maybe bicycling is also there, but since we are having smaller community, then we can reduce the number of outbound trips. So some examples, they are there in India. All the medieval towns like walled city of Amritsar, walled city of Jaipur, they are all on pedestrian scales. The wall itself defines the limit of the city. So this was a good example. At the same time, the new townships coming up, which are integrated townships, and the employment is within the township. So they are also good examples of integrated and 15-minute cities. And Chandigarh is a live feature where the sector is so planned that you can walk for the necessary activities. So that way, this 15-minute cities and integrated township, these concepts will flourish the reduction in the outbound trips. Then land use transport balancing, further efforts have to be made. And these are some of the examples. You can go for high rise, high density development, or a blend of high rise along the corridor, and then medium or low rise, low density development once you go away from the terminal. This may be along the corridor, you are having TOD like conditions, and the TOD is again maybe medium rise, medium density development. And there can be a blend of two transport systems where once you get down from the transport system, you are having the walkability or cyclability in practice. Then an NMT-centric mobility planning, and this has gained importance, especially in the European countries. Many countries have come up with the new plans to promote walkability and cycling. And specific or exclusive infrastructure needs to be created or needs to be planned and designed for NMTs, so that lesser reliance on public transport is also there, or mass transport is also there, and that way you can be safe and healthier on road. At the same time, promote micro mobility. Now, this micro mobility can be improved by equalizing the road space for walking and cycling. At present, we are not doing anything good for pedestrians and the cyclists, but the need of the hour or post-pandemic condition requires that more spaces should be planned and designed for walking and cycling. Develop inclusive infrastructure for walking and cycling. So whatever is required for walking and cycling, that infrastructure must be provided. Promote public bike sharing for first and last mile connectivity, because once you are at the terminal, from there how to reach the destination, that becomes a point, and PBS is a good option. Promote bike scooter sharing. This is a new concept emerging in many cities now, where instead of car sharing, now bike sharing is coming, because that covers lesser space, and that way the density on the road will also reduce. So adopt traffic calming and ITS applications so that faster movements can be there. For safe and healthy mobility, automatic thermal screening and compulsory mask within the vehicle, that should be made practice. Compulsory sanitization of mode and allied components, it is also essential. And again, I would say that in developed nations, it may be more convenient, but in developing countries, we need to look into this matter once again. New vehicle design and for social distancing has to be there, because this COVID condition is going to persist, and hence the design options we have to work out. Smart ticketing, security check, and waiting systems, they again need to be practiced in a more safer manner instead of the practices being done at the moment. Then promoting green public transport, that should be the agenda post-pandemic. And apart from following the existing practices, we need to practice the ITS-enabled transport system, smart ticketing, safe and secure system, automatic thermal scanning, sanitization certification, and e-mass transport modes. so that we are safer in future. And I can give it a sort of message that we cannot survive without mass public transport system. So we have to adopt new normal for public transport system. And the other measures that can be adopted are flexi office hours, because if you have staggered office hours, then maybe the traffic is distributed and the mass over there is reduced. ICT applications would also reduce the need of travel. At the same time, Wi-Fi enabled settlement has to be there, so that you are in a better position to communicate with others. And unmanned air carriers, they are going to play a big role. And already there's commercial activities, they are being done by this drone system, and this will lead to reduction in the trips also. So again, the transport system has to relook the scenario. So in this context, I'm waiting for this vaccine, and it is said that if the world has to live with corona, then let's plan for corona-free mobility. This was the view I wanted to present. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Luthra. Thank you very much. I think you have very nicely presented the idea of promoting micro-mobility for social distancing. And that's something we really need to do, besides, of course, the non-motorized transport and others, basically. I see that Dr. Bhavna Bali is already there, basically. Before I go to the next speaker, I'd like to invite Dr. Bhavna Bali to take the floor, because she wanted to talk mainly on the whole idea of revisiting the urban planning. Dr. Bhavna Bali, please. Kindly keep it short because we are running a little late. Can you hear me? Dr. Bali?
Dr. Bhavna Bali, you need to change your microphone. Audio, you need to change to microphone. You pick listen only.
Dr. Bali, if you're not ready, then we move on.
Can we proceed to next?
Yeah, then as a matter of fact, well, I think one of the SDG 11 target, very specially, that relates to reducing the adverse per capita environmental impact cities, and we have to pay special attention to the air quality and municipal and other waste management. I would like to invite specially Dr. Anupam Khajuria, a researcher in the United Nations Center for Regional Development, who will be talking mainly on the theme of opportunities for a circular economy for achieving the SDG 11. Dr. Khajuria, please.
Thank you, sir, for can you see my slides?
Yeah, not yet seen.
Kulwant sir, if I can just interject, my microphone is now connected. I will go in after Ms. Moore's presentation, if you may
Okay,
permit.
all right. Yeah, that's fine. Yes, that's fine.
I already upload my slides.
Yeah, kindly try to. Hello, your slides are not yet seen, but
Yes, but I maybe it's just is it sharing now?
yes, it is. It has started. Yes. Please go ahead.
So today, thank you very much for inviting me, Dr. Kulwant Singh and Surjit Singh ji, and for this event in Malaysia, Urban Forum Inside event. So I will discuss about the post COVID-19. I should not say opportunities or just say the applications or the utilization of circular economy towards SDG 11. So my overview is with the three main points according to the timing of the presentation. First is the impact on, especially on SDG 11 and utilization of circular economy, why we need to utilize circular economy and why we are talking about this. And the last one is the message and actions toward the post-COVID-19 situation in the new normal situation in SDG 11. So when we're talking about the impact, like in the beginning, all presenter thought about they had the more impact on economy, more impact on population, or mainly by the economy sector. But I will discuss with few points such as like rise in urban poverty, because if you see here in the circle point, there is 90% of the COVID-19 are cases in the urban areas where shut down the public transport and definitely destabilization of the economy. And we can have a lower access to the public and green areas. And all the air traffic is closed and very restricted movement between even across the countries and globally. And sharp and short-term like reduction of pollution level. If we say air pollution in last year and this year, it's some difference in the pollution level as well. So what's the importance of circular economy in the post situation when we are talking about the during COVID-19 and after the COVID-19? So if we see the cities and community sectors, it's really important because all are very closed loop in the urban areas as well as the wastewater treatment plants. And if we discuss about the business sector, this ensures the lifetime extension of the product, which we can use in the supply chain from the circular loop. And the third one is the industrial sector, where we can talk about the industrial symbiosis or industrial parts, where the one company's waste would be utilized by the other company as a raw material, industrial symbiosis. And the last one is the household and consumers, where they can reuse and recycle their products by the certified products again and again. So what's the application and why circular economy related with the SDGs, SDG basically 11 or SDG all? So it have a direct and strong and direct contribution with circular economy. For example, in the case of the 3R in the waste management sector, this is the main crucial part which is directly achieved by the SDG 12. And the indirect contribution is by the SDG target 9.1, that is sustainable industrialization, or 8.2, that is economic productivity. And progress on target supports update of circular economy practices, which is updated by the business models of the targets to the companies and enhance their skill of their support and the workers and entrepreneurship matters. And the next point is weak and low linked. There are some bad factors of the SDGs which is have a weak and not very much linked with the circular economy. Like 5.3 sector target is like a gender inequality, or we can say, but we have somehow it is linked in some portion. And the last one is the cooperation support with the circular economy practices, that is the public-private partnership or in international cooperation partnerships. So the main message I would like to say, there are 5 or 6 messages. The first one is we need to adopt the new realities, which is that transformation of in order to adopt including the social distancing and changes in the workplace practice. Like today I'm working from home and tomorrow I'm working from office. So we have like alternate days to work from home and office with all the staff members. So in that same way, like we have to make the new realities, we can adopt it. And the next point is about the frontier technologies and international agencies. That is the main other factor with the adopt with the circular economy also, and new normal. Because with the artificial intelligence, we can improve and empower the communities to improve the zoning and street design. Like Ashwini ji already mentioned about the new roads and for the bicycles and sharing bicycle facilities. And in India, there's very rich problem we have. They have not much roads, especially for the pavement for the bicycles. So this type of artificial intelligence system may help to improve or empower the communities. And the third point is economy recovery. That is the investment in the city-related jobs, like in waste management sector or in health sector, which can help the economic packages in the post-COVID-19. And another one is the partnership. That is the not only government sector is doing anything or only the private sector is responsible. So it's like a strengthen the multi-stakeholder partnership, even in public, private, or researchers or institutes. They can mobilize the knowledge, resources, and latest innovative technologies. And the last one is about the build better recovery, because when we talk about the build better back the situation, I don't know, we have to adopt with the go with the past pandemics in the history. We have not yet back, or we have to recover back. So in that portion, I think it is towards the beginning of decade of action, which we say to improve better and build healthier and safer environment and the world for future. So in last, our UN Secretary General also mentioned that we need to recover with the real opportunity to do something that is right for the future. So on the above points, I try to put how we can become to do really something right for the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anupam. I think what you rightly said is that turning recovery in real opportunity, basically. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello. Can you kindly, there's a lot of disturbance here, please. Hello. Can you unmute yourself? Can you mute yourself, please? Okay. I think we still have two presentations. We, we have Mr. Anup Kaur, urban planner, who will be speaking mainly on the challenges of municipal infrastructure development. One of the most important areas is already highlighted that we have to strengthen the urban local bodies. So they have a greater role for making it is much more sustainable. I'd like you to kindly put on your presentation. Let's be as brief as possible. Hello, hello, administrator, Mr. Administrator. Hello, hello, Mr. Administrator. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, hello,
Oh,
Mr. John Fu.
yes, we are here.
सिंह साहब वो लोग रेस्पॉन्स कर रहे हैं, they can hear you. They are responding. One lady is responding to you. I think we can go ahead. Dr. Singh.
I think
Dr. Singh, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
No, I think you can start and go ahead with this.
I am saying that, yes, I have invited Anup Kaur to speak on.
Anup, can you start?
Hello. Hello. Yeah, Miss Anup is having the same issue with Dr. Bali earlier because her is only listen now.
Anup cannot speak. I think Dr. Singh, then go to the next speaker. Anup has a problem.
Miss Anup, please try to look at private chat. I just private chat you. So now you may proceed to Dr. Bali first, and then while I settle Miss Anup's technical problem.
Can I invite Dr. Bhavna Bali? Please.
Yes. So can you hear?
Yes, please start your presentation.
Is the presentation visible, sir?
Not yet visible.
So it's getting uploaded. So is it visible?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay, but I have already uploaded.
Please click again to the plus sign and see your
All right.
presentation.
Okay.
And then you have to confirm. Yeah, now it's visible.
Please
Is
go
it?
ahead.
All right.
Yeah, it's visible.
Please go ahead.
Yes. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, ISPER, for this kind invitation to join the deliberations at Malaysia Urban Forum 2020. I would be talking very briefly on select urban planning policies, which, as we understand, have been we have been grappling with some of these planning issues for a long time, but they have come to our focus more vividly in the current pandemic situation. So I would like to draw your attention to two things that I would be focusing on. One is the density versus the congestion aspect, which is critically linked with target 1 on access to safe, affordable, accessible, and sustainable transport. And of course, the question of green spaces. I'll be talking about the land use allocations. So as far as the urban density versus congestion question is concerned, I was reading through one very interesting article long time ago. This was published almost like a century ago, and I would like to read it through. Room density when greater than 1 person per room has proved to have an important relation to the general death rate, infant death rate, and the prevalence of communicable diseases, something that we have been also witnessing in the current ongoing COVID-19 situation. The effect of overcrowding on the nervous system is known to be marked. Babies cry, children quarrel, parents are irritable, nerves are on the edge, tempers explosive. The connection between extreme overcrowding and sexual immorality, including incest, is well known, where privacy is impossible and where old and young of both sexes are herded together like animals, the inhibitions of civilization melt away. Now, this is very critical in the current situation, and we have all heard of increasing violence against domestic violence against both women and children particularly during the lockdown period. But very importantly, we have missed a certain point regarding the whole issue of space. Perhaps we have, in a way, in our discussions, kind of not kind of confused between the density and congestion, but more importantly, we've not seen them as very distinct entities while we are looking at urban settlements. So density is a physical attribute which is related with space and average settlement that one would be looking at. And very importantly, if you were to look at some of the metropolitan cities in India, they're very densely populated, but do not compare as high as the density that are found in some of the global cities like Tokyo or New York. So the case in point here is of Delhi, which has a population density of 11,297 persons per square kilometer. But that's an average density for Delhi as a whole. But within Delhi, there are settlements which have a population density which is even 4 times more than that for the city as a whole. And the question here, which had drawn our attention in the early period of the lockdown and the pandemic outbreak in India was Dharavi slum, which has a population density of 3,54,000 plus persons per square kilometer. So where are we? So as planning norms, we are looking at increasing densities or are we looking at also the question of congestion? And congestion here, I would like to state, is more of an economic attribute, because the fact that a significant section of the population is unable to have access to dwelling units which are sufficiently sized dwelling units is essentially related with economic affordability. And Census of India very clearly points out that this factor is actually translating into nearly 15 million households which are grappling with the congestion issue. So this pandemic has actually thrown us this question of whether we want to look at compact cities, smaller size cities, perhaps more densely built, or should we look at an urban form which is more extensive? And in that sense, should there be a limit on what would be the physical extent of our urban settlements? And in that context, we do have the URDPFI guidelines to inform planners as to what should be, what could be an ideal population density across different types of urban settlements, both in plain areas and hill areas. The second important aspect is related with the question of land use allocation. We have the fact that close to about 1,800 cities in our country, statutory towns, have master plans, and it's a tool which is meant for planned urban development. But unfortunately, even though residential land use occupies a huge proportion of the area, Yet we are grappling with the question of housing shortage. And this brings to the fact that in a pandemic-like situation, we have a question of congestion factor, and we also have the question of housing shortage. How do we address that? A very important point that also, brought our attention back to the question of land use allocation was space allocation for recreational purposes. Now, here is a small study that we had done in Lucknow Smart City, and we had identified land cover for the Kaisarbagh ABD area. And it is quite evident that, the built-up space has completely overtaken this Kaisarbagh ABD area in the last 20 years. And URDPFI is has given a minimum 3 square meters of open space per person in case of a built-up area, and it should be 10 to 12 square meters of open space per person otherwise. WHO norms are 9 square meters per capita. And if we do this comparison for Lucknow's Kaisarbagh ABD area, it is absolutely minuscule per capita availability of open space. So we understand that there is an issue. And COVID pandemic has actually thrown us a huge opportunity to revisit some of these issues and look at our planning in a more holistic manner. So one of the things that that our current planning focus should actually kind of look at the question of flexibility in zoning regulations. And very clearly, this is important from the perspective of how we are planning transport, particularly the public transport also in our cities. So, Chandigarh, for example, was planned on very clear principles of land use zoning, of clear separation between the conforming and the non-conforming land uses. Now, when we are looking at these kinds of very stringent zoning regulations, then we must also be geared up for a longer transit time, dependence on public and private transport, because your workplace and your residential areas would perhaps be at a distance. The other important aspect is we need to relook at how we are looking at urban land. And urban land, of course, is the most important and the most prized resource for the city, but it has to be also looked at as a collective good, and more so in the context of equitable access to that land. So not just for housing purposes, but also access to public spaces, access to open spaces. So fair enough, like I had just shown in the previous slide, that the Kaisarbagh ABD area is densely developed, and the per capita availability of open spaces is absolutely minuscule. But let's look at repurposing our existing infrastructure. How about the school playgrounds in the neighborhood of this area, which could be used for the purpose of, parks or as playgrounds for the residents in the nearby colonies, a process which can be facilitated by the RWAs. So that is one thing. Another important part, which obviously has been talked about, is a 15-minute neighborhood. So everything is within a 15 minutes walking distance. So the whole concept of neighborhood units being self-sufficient actually is something that emerges from the fact that that our work, play, and both work, play, and residential areas need to be in proximity of each other. We are also looking at the question of housing. This pandemic had thrown open this question on what happens to the migrants, the ones who are contributing immensely to a city. So we've had this policy, the National Urban Rental Housing Policy 2015. But what is necessary now is that we need to adopt it and look at the question of how we can reuse the existing dwelling units, the vacant housing stock to the tune of nearly 11 million dwelling units, which can be easily used for rental housing purposes. But of course, this requires facilitation by the state as well as the local urban development authorities. Additionally, we've talked about the question of equitable access to land, and how do we ensure that that land can be made accessible to the poor, the urban poor, or the ones who lack the wherewithals to have decent housing. So in that direction, the Odisha state government had come out with a historic legislation in 2017, which is the Odisha Land Rights to Slum Dwellers Act 2017, and which actually is looking into in situ land rights to about 250,000 households. And this is going to benefit about 1.2 million people in the state. So can we look at these kinds of legislations elsewhere? Of course, I know that the urban situation in other parts of the country, other states are very different. But this is one step, and this can be certainly thought through. And another important aspect which has often been ignored is the question of incremental housing for slum dwellers. This is something that has a lot of these initiatives have happened over the past several decades, but this incremental housing for slum dwellers is something that as the ULBs can certainly look into in those areas where they may not be looking at giving permanent ownership rights. So perhaps a tenured right for 10 years or 15 years, that again is something that will be very, very meaningful. The last point that I would like to draw your attention to is a question of peri-urban settlements. Now, urban settlements have actually increased because of expansion into the peri-urban areas. And what has happened is that this land appropriation, which is mostly led by the government, state governments, but also by the private developers, this has left a sort of a huge question in terms of integrating peri-urban landscape into the main settlement. What has happened is because in the process of land appropriation, the village common property resources have been completely overlooked. They have been neglected, and other kinds of non-conforming land uses have taken over these common property resources. So the need for taking care, saving the common property resources in peri-urban areas will be a huge benefit to both the peri-urban communities as well as the high-rise, the new occupants of this landscape. And while planned urban development has looked into allocating these open spaces for gated colonies, the very residents whose lands have been acquired for this purpose, they have been left without any such public amenities. So So this is something that we need to look into very critically as far as integrating the rural and the urban are concerned. And there have been some initiatives in the right direction towards integrating, the pedestrians, the question of pedestrians in access to road space. So this is an initiative that was led by ITDP, and Chennai was the first city in the country to adopt the National Urban Transport Policy of 2014, and came out with this intervention of reclaiming these road spaces for the pedestrians. So this is a project which is currently ongoing. 100 kilometers of this stretch has been already built. And there are newer initiatives now to scale it up to other municipalities in the state. So we do have these kinds of interventions. At the moment, they are perhaps piecemeal, but there is a need to scale them up. And this COVID-19 pandemic has thrown great opportunities for us to relook in the right direction for urban planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bali.
Thank you.
Last speaker, can I request Anu to kindly take it over?
Thank you, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much, sir.
Upload your
so-
presentation you have. You have
Sir,
a presentation?
it's not possible. Yes, sir, I have, but it's not uploading. I will.
Okay.
So my topic is post-COVID-19 challenges of municipal infrastructure development. First of all, I would like to start with brief introduction of PMDC. Punjab Municipal Infrastructure Development Company. PMDC is an arm of the state of Punjab for the municipal infrastructure development, established in March 2009 with an objective to mobilize resources for municipal infrastructure development in the state of Punjab. As a nodal agency for various urban development missions initiated by Government of India and state government, it coordinates with the local bodies, state and national government. It also evolves policy for public-private partnership, raising funds from other financial institutions and strengthening the local base. So the Punjab state has 167 urban local bodies, out of which 13 are municipal corporation and 97 municipal council. According to census of 2011, the total urban population of Punjab was 10.3 million, which is about 37.5% of the total population of state. Now let's look at some of the initiatives taken by PMDC. So first one is like we are working towards universal coverage for water supply and sewerage. We have adopted 3R policy of solid waste management, formation of master plans for 16 cities to integrate SDG 11 for Upper Horizon 2030. We have taken steps to localize SDG 11 through various reforms such as tech structure, building regulation, sanitation and heritage conservation, culture heritage as fourth pillar of the city economy. We have also notified new affordable housing policy, primarily focusing on urban poor, lower and middle income group. The COVID-19 pandemic is not a crisis of the city, but the crisis of a certain kind of city, where decades of market-oriented policies have imposed limits on the public planning system to respond meaningful to the pandemic. If we are to recover and prepare against crisis in the future, we need to strengthen and improve our planning system by review of existing laws and bylaws, strict enforcement of development regulation, adherence to the norms and standards, creating environment for pedestrian and cycling, dedicated routes for urban public transport, review of street vendor, informal sector, and developing transit housing for the labor class and improvement of slums, new building regulation for maintaining minimum required distance and dimensions, use of technology in monitoring and plan formulation, developing two-way communication between municipal bodies and the citizens, last but not the least, developing participatory approach for evolving citizens at the community level. So, thank you.
Very much, Hope, that was excellent. I think we had 6 excellent presentations. There is not much time to, we already exceeded 9 by like 20 plus. But this webinar is fully recorded, and we will like to share this recorded presentation with everybody who has participated in this webinar. And also, with your permission, we can hopefully share your presentations also with all the participants. So with that, I would like to say thank you very much to Ishwar, and thank you very much to all the speakers, Dr. Saswat, Dr. Bali, Anup Kaur, and Sujit Ji, and also Professor Luthra, who is on the screen. Thank you so much for joining us. I think great contribution to the this urban forum that is organized by Malaysia. Thank you very much, and wish you all the best. So with that, I think we'd like to close it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Thank you, Dr. Singh. Thank you,
Thank you very much
Sujit.
indeed. That's excellent indeed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, administrator and organizer. Thank you very much.